Hi, I'm Patricia Allingham Carlson, and this is my video Walk in Autumn. This painting is a fairly simple painting that I completed in a small amount of time. I took some very simple steps to take it from beginning to completion, including using my spray bottle with water and droplets. It was a lot of fun to paint this way, and it gives a great effect for foliage. Walking down a road in the country in autumn or through a path in the woods, it's got to be one of the best kind of ways to spend an afternoon or a morning. I hope you enjoy my video and give it a thumbs up. My cousin took a walk with a friend and made a beautiful photograph of the day. She allowed me to use the image for inspiration for this painting. And it all began with simple one-point perspective, with the path going backward into space and smaller as it did. I sketched out the shoulders of the road, the pathway itself, and the trees. The road appeared to go over a hill, so of course the trees up in the front are going to be much taller, and the trees as they go down the hill and away from the viewer will get smaller and lower on the horizon. Next, I squirted water over the top part of the painting and dribbled in some very condensed bright yellow paint. I splattered it, I dropped it in, and I didn't move it around after I dropped it on because I wanted the water droplets to make it move and not my paintbrush. My thinking for this is to have lots of little dots of white paper showing through, which gives it a light and airy feeling to the leaves. I usually begin with the lightest color and then progress on to another color, getting steadily darker and more intense in value as I go. Here I'm using burnt sienna. Again, I'm splattering in the paint. I am touching the paint onto the surface, but I am not spreading it around with a brush. If the drops get too dry, I will simply spray it again. In the photo, there was a little bit of blue sky showing here and there, and that blue made a beautiful contrast for the orangey color of the burnt sienna. After I put in some of that blue, I came in with some sap green and then some hooker's green dark. There was some deep shadow on some areas of the woods on either side of the path. And here I'm using some indigo. You can see how wet the paper is. If it gets too wet though, you better let it dry because you won't have any dotty spray action if everything just runs together. But you can let it dry and then give it a light spray again. Those darker areas provide a nice dark contrast to all the bright and light areas. They also give some depth to the painting. And now a touch of red. The photograph did not have a lot of red, but I used my imagination to kick it up a bit. I'm taking the end of the brush and scratching into the paper lightly. And it starts to create some forms for where I want the tree branches and the tree trunks. If the paper's not wet, this won't work. but you can get some very light branches this way. Now I'm taking a mixture of burnt umber and indigo, and I'm painting in some of the tree trunks to mark where I want them to go. As the tree trunks and branches disappear upward into the clumps of foliage, I have them emerging and then disappearing and then coming out again. And that way it looks like they're weaving in and out of the branches. And there are some branches covering the tree trunks entirely, and the leaves just entirely cover them so they don't show at all. This helps to look a little bit more realistic. I'm marking in where some slopes are along the side of the road. Where it slopes, it gets a little darker, so I can have a place to put a shadow. And the top of each little slope will be brighter because it's catching the light. In this painting, the light is coming from the left top side, and I can tell by where the shadows are, and I'll be placing the shadows later. Where the road disappears into space, I'm filling in some trees off in the distance. And the next thing I do is to begin to paint the grass that grows on the slopes by the road. In some areas, it's being struck by some bright sunshine, and it's a very light yellow green. As that little slope curves downward, it gets darker on the left side as it moves into shadow. And I continue to tweak the foliage up ahead on top. Don't you love to take a walk in the fall sometimes? The day is so crisp and lovely. Where's your favorite place to walk? The shoulders of the road are flat and they are absolutely covered with leaves. So I begin to dot some yellow leaves all along the edges. And continue to work into the interior of the painting while I have that yellow on my brush. I mix it with some green and some other colors. I continue to work with the grassy slopes on the side of the road. And there's a shadow in the slope on the right side. And then filling in with the leaves laying along the shoulder, which is a flat section of the road. So those lines will go straight across, whereas the slopes on the sides with grass go upward. That helps with the perception of space as well. I developed the trees a little bit more, and then I erased some lines I had marked down for the road. I'm darkening some areas of the grass on the right-hand side, as well as the forest where it's quite shadowed. I'm also darkening my slopes along the side of the road and the grass at the bottom of the slope. putting a little pop of red and orange off in the distance, just because of those beautiful fall leaves. What's your favorite kind of tree for making beautiful leaves in the autumn? I think mine is the sugar maple. You could write and tell me yours. I love trees, and I really do love the colors of fall. Do you? A little splatter, a little darker areas for the leaves along the shoulders of the road, and I'm pretty close to being done with that section. And then will be one of the most fun sections of the whole painting for me, and that's the road, because I get to use some dry brush and I get to paint the shadows from the trees. For dry brush, I've dipped into Payne's Gray. There's not much paint on my brush, and I'm dragging my brush sideways. So just some areas of the texture of the paper is getting picked up. It's not solid paint, but rather dry, brushy looking paint. And I want to mark out the direction that a car or a bike or somebody traveled along that road. And I want to make sure I lead all the direction toward the vanishing point that goes toward the back of the picture so I can keep the perspective in reality. Filling in the tree trunks a little darker and a little bit more clearly. Next, I get out my color wheel and I figure out what color should the shadows be from the trees, because these are important. I come up with a bluish purple color, and I take the shadow down the slope from each tree that goes along the side of the left. So down the slope and across the road. If it makes it to the other side, it curves back up the slope, and that gives me a whole other dimension of realism. Now, I would say my colors might not be completely realistic, but shadows are really not black. If you look at your shadow carefully, you're going to see some blues, maybe even some deep purples in them. And I like to exaggerate that gorgeous color. And so I do. Another real benefit here is that the blue complements the orange in the foliage so well, and the purple complements the yellow in the foliage so well. After I added that color into the shadows on the road, I decided maybe I better touch a little bit of it up into the sky as well, just to continue the color into another area of the painting and make it more continuous, have more continuity. I hope you enjoyed my video, Walk in Autumn. This was a fairly simple painting that I just did, and maybe you'd like to try something similar. I hope I've given you some ideas. It would be great if you'd hit a thumbs up and ring the bell on the links below. If you sign up, you won't miss any future videos. There's more links below too, to my Facebook art page, my blog, products I like to use, and art products I make. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next video.